Hello and welcome back again. So it's October, it's spooky season, so I'm making an outfit for Halloween. So I've been wanting to do a red and pink Lovecore themed clown look for a really long time, and I decided this Halloween would be the year that I do it. It doesn't seem like it's going to be too difficult. It's a fairly simple design, so I think I should be able to make it pretty quickly. So my video for last month is a little postponed, so it's going to be coming out next month instead because it's like 3 outfits and it's taking me longer than I thought. So I'm making this Halloween costume as fast as I can. So I'm hoping that I can do it within a week, which is a pretty short amount of time for me. But like I said, I think it's a fairly simple outfit, so I think I should be able to do it. And I'm also making it so the rough collar part is going to be removable. That way I can wear the rest of the outfit like a comfy, casual, around the house kind of outfit. So first we need to start on the sketch, and then we're gonna go get some fabric. And I already know exactly what I want, and I think it's gonna be a little tricky to find, but I think I'll be able to find something. So let's get started. So I want to make like a classic onesie clown suit, but with shorter pants. And I want the proportions to be a little more exaggerated, so I'm gonna make the pants and sleeves really poofy at the ends. I'm also going to do this heart hairstyle I did earlier this year for Valentine's Day because I think it's going to be really cute and give me a little bit more height on my head. For the makeup, I want to get a white face paint and I want to do all pink and red with some little heart details. I'll figure out the details more when I actually do the makeup, but I think I know what I want to do. Anyway, so I went to my favorite fabric shop in Amsterdam, A Boeke, to get the fabric. They have so many nice fabrics and trims. They're a little more expensive than the fabric market I usually go to, but they have a way better selection. Luckily, I was able to find exactly what I wanted. Also, I did go to the fabric market I usually go to a few days before this, and I didn't find anything good. Then I walked across town to a specialty makeup store called Backstage. Their main focus is drag makeup, so they have lots of interesting things. They have the Cryolan paint sticks, which I hear is good for a white base, so I got the lightest one they had. I already have the Ben Nye white clown face powder at home, so I didn't need to get it. But yeah, the store is so cool. Anyway, so after that, I took some pics and then headed back home. Okay, so here's the fabric I got. It's a flannel, so it's really nice and soft, and it should be really comfy. And I got these little buttons, and also like this satin fabric for the red. And it's super soft, so it'll be really nice and comfy when I wear it. Okay, so to make the pattern, I'm going to start with my hoodie pattern and one of my bloomer patterns. I couldn't find the pattern for the bloomers I'm wearing here, so I used a different similar one, but that's like the plan of what I want, but more poofy for the pants. I started by tracing around my bloomer pattern and marked the waistline and extended the bottom a bit to make them longer. I used the hoodie pattern as a base for the top, but modified it a bit. I decided the top needed to be a bit wider, so I extended it in the middle a little bit. I want to have a button panel in the front as well, so I added an extra 2 inches to the center seam. I connected the pieces on the side with a diagonal line. I haven't made something exactly like this before, but I looked up clown suit patterns before I started, so I would have an idea of what to do. My pattern is a little different than a traditional clown suit because I wanted it to be extra poofy on the legs. I tested the paper pattern on myself and thought it looked pretty good, but I realized I wanted the bottom hem to be a little bit curved, so I added a little bit extra paper to the bottom and cut it out again. I actually modded it a bit more than I showed here. I made the inside hem a little bit more straight and left the outside hem edge more curved. And the curved hem will make it more poofy and keep it from pulling weird or being too tight. For the back, I traced around the front pattern piece I made and then modified it a little bit. The back middle seam needed a bit more of a curved seam for the booty area, and it also didn't need a button panel. And then I also modified the armhole seam. Now that I'm all done with the project, I can say the back seam should have been a bit longer, maybe higher up in the back around the neckline. So if I make one of these again, I'll fix the pattern before I use it. I also needed a Peter Pan collar pattern, and I couldn't find any that I've already made, so I just traced around this detachable collar I made a while ago. I'm going to gather the neckline of the suit to the collar, so it didn't need to match exactly perfectly. Now I need to cut this out, but I'm so scared! I don't know if this pattern is going to work out the way that I want it to, and this fabric was like $9 a meter, so it's not cheap if I have to recut it out again. So I'm really nervous. I hope that this is going to come out right, but I don't know for sure. So I'm very nervous to cut this out.
Yeah, well, I had to cut it out anyway to keep working on this, so I did it. I cut out the front and back pieces while the fabric was folded over, because I need 2 of each front and back pieces. Oh my gosh, they were so long I barely had space to cut everything out. I also cut out the sleeves using my hoodie sleeve pattern, which didn't need any modifying. Of course I'm adding pockets as well, so I cut them out of some of the scrap fabric. I'm using the red fabric for the leg and arm cuffs as well as the collar, so I cut them out too. I'm also going to add details with red mesh tulle that I already had. The cuffs are just rectangles of fabric. I made the cuffs about twice as wide as I wanted them to be because I'm going to fold them over, and double the circumference of my wrists and legs. I'm going to gather the leg and wrist hems onto the cuffs so that they're not too ruffling. And now everything is cut out and ready to get started sewing.
Okay, it's the next day and it took me about 4 hours to make the pattern and cut out all the fabric yesterday. So now I need to try and assemble as much as I can. I didn't cut out the fabric for the pom-poms yet because it's going to take a lot of fabric, and I'm also doing the pom-poms as my Patreon tutorial, so I'm doing the pom-poms at the end. So let's get started and see how it goes.
Yay, now it's time to start sewing everything together. The first thing I'm going to do is sew all the pockets onto the side seams. I figured out where I wanted the pockets to be and marked the top and bottom where I wanted the pockets to go. Then I matched up all the pattern pieces and marked each one and pinned the pocket pieces onto the main pieces. There are lots of different ways to add pockets into clothing, so this is just my method. I sewed the pockets on and then trimmed the edges only where the pockets are and zigzag stitched the edges to finish them. I admit pockets can be a little difficult and a little confusing to put inside seams, so I hope this makes sense. Anyway, with the pockets sewn on, I ironed the pockets on the back pieces out, and on the front pieces I ironed the pocket pieces toward the inside because you want the pockets to be on the front of the inside of the garment. Then I matched a back piece with a front piece and pinned them together. I'm going to sew down the side seam and around the pockets. I want the seams on the pockets that I already sewed to stay folded over, so I cut a tiny slit above and below the pockets. And here's a little close-up of how that looks. I sewn pockets in without doing this little slit cut in it before, and I just find that this makes it a little bit easier to sew around the pockets. Then I just sewed down the side seam and went around the pockets. So you can see when I get to the part where it's connected, I stop and I turn it and go around the pocket. And then once it's sewn down, here's how it looks. And before I trimmed the side seams and zigzag stitched it to finish it up, I went back and ironed the seams open so they would look nice and flat, and ironed down the pockets so it wouldn't be too noticeable where the opening was. Then I sewed a gathering stitch along the hems of the main pieces. I pinned the middle seams together and gathered the hems so I could try it on and see how it was looking so far.
Okay, here's how it's looking so far. So it's looking really good. I like how big and baggy and comfy it is so far. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next part, which is doing the cuffs on the bottom. And then I'll be moving on to sewing the middle seam and doing the buttons and stuff.
So while I'm working on the cuffs, I thought I would talk a little bit about clowns and why I like them. The first clown-related thing that I remember liking was the Big Comfy Couch. It was a Canadian show that aired on PBS in Canada and the US and a few other places. It aired in the US from around 1995 to the early 2000s, so I was around 6 or 7 when I watched it. The show is about a clown named Lunette and her doll, Molly. The show mostly takes place on her giant couch and a few other places around her house and the town. Also, all of the other people on the show are clowns as well. The show is really silly and cute. I love the character design for Lunette, especially her stripy socks, and her name is so cute. She talks to her doll, Molly, which is a little puppet that never talks. She also has a special blanket. I loved dolls, and I had a blanket that my grandmother made for me when I was born, and I still have it. It's one of my most treasured belongings. I think it's one of the things that made me want to learn how to sew more than anything else. My grandma sewed throughout her life, and she taught me a few things about sewing, and she really inspired me. She passed away a few years ago, and she saw the things I made, but I wanted to have a successful brand before she passed, but I couldn't make it happen. But I know she was still really proud of me anyway. She was always really impressed by the things that I made. It took me so many takes to record that without crying, oh my gosh. Anyway, back to the show. My parents also got me a Molly doll because I liked the show so much. So I really related to Lunette when I was growing up. On the show, they talk a lot about feelings and understanding yourself and others, including talking about things like consent, how to be respectful to other people, and to be your authentic self. It's a really cute show, and I still remember it fondly, and a lot of the episodes are up on YouTube if you want to check it out yourself. Lunette is definitely my favorite clown character, but my favorite clown aesthetic is that of Pierrot clowns. They're sad, sweet, and elegant. I don't really like the classic American-style clowns as much. They're too gaudy and cheesy for me. Obviously, I prefer more monochromatic color schemes. Anything more than about 3 colors is just too much for me. It's just my preference for myself, though. I do really admire other people who have colorful rainbow aesthetics. I also like Pierrot because they're more melancholy. I love sad clowns. I've always felt a bit like a sad clown. I lived most of my life trying to be happy and silly and make people laugh while hiding the sadness and the loneliness that I felt. That's why the clown outfit I'm making now is a cute, sad clown Pierrot-inspired look. And I've actually dressed up as a Pierrot clown once before a really long time ago. I think the second time my long-distance partner came to visit me was during Halloween because I wanted to dress up together. If you don't know, this is my partner and we've been together for almost 15 years. We met on the internet and I moved from the USA to Amsterdam a few years ago so we could finally be together. Anyway, he came to visit and I think it was the year 2009 and I convinced him to dress up as clowns with me so I could do our makeup. Honestly, this pic is so embarrassing now, oh my gosh. We just bought some crappy Halloween store face paint and I used some clothes that we had to dress up. I'm very excited that after all these years I'm finally doing a real clown-inspired look. For a long time, I've been a bit scared/embarrassed to do a clown look, but I think a lot more people like clowns now. Plus, I dress up in all kinds of silly and different outfits already, so a clown look is only a little weirder than everything else. Okay, here's how it's looking so far. Okay, so I did all the cuffs, and I need to add elastic into all of them. And I adjusted the cuffs and the side seam on the main thing, and that alone has taken me 4 hours. It's so crazy, just this. Ugh, so annoying. It's taking so long. I thought that I would have this outfit done today, and I'm definitely not anywhere near done. I still need to sew the front and the back together, and I think I need to adjust the back a little bit because it's a little tight. And add the front panels with the buttons, and then add the collar, and then I need to make the separate collar as well, and the pom-poms. I'm going to go ahead and add the elastic and then sew the front and back pieces together, and then I think that's going to be it for today. And I guess I'll finish it up next time I work on it, which should be either Sunday or Monday. We'll see. Today's Friday. Alright, well, let's see what we can get done. Anyway, so I think that's all I have to say about clown inspirations, so let's get back to the sewing. I did the cuffs in kind of a weird way, but I did it this way because I didn't want the seams on the inside of the cuffs to be visible. So after I finished making the cuffs, I ironed the edges where they fold over and ironed some interfacing onto one of the Peter Pan collar pieces. Now the cuffs are ready for elastic, so I measured on my leg about how long I wanted the elastic to be and then marked it with an invisible marker. Then I used a dull plastic embroidery needle and some twine to pull the elastic through the channels I made in the cuffs. When I'm making something with elastic, I try to make sure whatever I'm working on fits before I cut and sew the elastic into place. It's really important to try things on a lot when you're making something. Once I was happy with how the cuffs fit, I sewed the elastic really well with a zigzag stitch and then sewed closed the opening that was left for pulling the elastic through. I did this with both the leg cuffs and the wrist cuffs on this outfit. Then I also adjusted the back seam a little bit because I felt it was still a bit too tight when I sat down. This helped, but it didn't quite fix the problem though, but I'll discuss that later. Then I tried the outfit on again, and I thought it was looking pretty good. The pants and sleeves are looking nice and poofy, and I like how the cuffs came out. The red fabric is so soft and silky, it feels really nice. Since I thought everything looked good, I decided it was finally time to sew down the middle seam, so I sewed it and trimmed it and zigzag stitched it, but I just showed the sewing it here. Finishing the edges is always the same process and always a little boring. Anyway, next I needed to make the Peter Pan collar for the neckline, so I sewed a gathering stitch onto the long mesh pieces that I cut out to make a cute frilly trim for the collar. I pinned the second layer of the collar on top to sandwich the trim in between the layers and sewed them down. Then I trimmed the seams and flipped the collar inside out. The seams needed ironing, so I carefully ironed around the collar. The mesh fabric could melt with the iron, so I was careful to avoid touching it. Before I sew the collar on, I want to do the button panels. I really hate when buttons are off-center, so with this project, I wanted to make sure the buttons lined up down the middle, especially since I'm going to add the pom-poms on afterwards, and it will look weird if the pom-poms are off-center. So for the panels, I folded over the extra fabric and pinned it down so they would overlap in the middle. You can see the middle seam is already sewn at the bottom where the button panels are. The tricky part about this is the part where the panels overlap at the bottom. So what I did was fold over the bottom of the panel at an angle where the one overlaps the other, and I top stitched it to keep it in place and to finish it. With the button panels ready, I decided to add the collar next. I tested it out and it was way too tight, so I cut a little bit off the inside seam to make it wider. Then I just pinned and sewed the collar onto the neckline. To finish the inside edge, I used a little bit of bias tape I made with some other red fabric that I had. I sewed on the inside above the collar and then trimmed the excess seams. Then I folded over the bias tape and sewed it down to make it and the collar stay in place. Then I folded under the unsewed edge and pinned it and then sewed it down. This was kind of tricky and maybe not the best method, but I don't like making facings, so this will do. With the collar on, the only thing left to do was finish the buttons. But when I started them, I realized the collar wasn't lining up at the neckline, so I had to rip apart the stitching on one side, and I moved the collar down and made sure it would line up with the other side before I sewed it back up again. I just sewed it back up the same way I did it before, but I didn't show it here, but yeah, I didn't. Once that was fixed, I laid out the buttons on the panels to figure out how far apart I wanted them to be and used a washable fabric marker to mark where I wanted the buttonholes to go. I used a scrap piece of fabric to test out making a buttonhole on this fabric, and it came out perfect, so I went ahead and did the rest of the outfit. Sewing buttonholes always makes me nervous, so doing a test run helps a lot. When I got to the last buttonhole, I had to rip apart the overlapping section that I sewed down previously because it was getting in the way. I just sewed it back down again after sewing the buttonhole. Sewing buttonholes can be really intimidating. My first time making a blouse with buttonholes was a nightmare. I made the button panels too thin and had ruffles all along the edges of the panels, so it was super thick where I wanted to sew the buttonholes, and it just wouldn't sew them right. So I didn't do any buttons for a long time after that. Since then, I've learned that you don't want the fabric to be too thick, too uneven, or too many layers where you're sewing the buttonholes. but if you have an even panel with the right amount of fabric, sewing buttonholes is pretty easy. You could practice them on scrap fabric to get more comfortable with them too. Don't let them scare you away from doing a project you want to do. Oh yeah, I forgot about the sleeves. The very last thing I did was sew the sleeves onto the outfit.
Okay, the outfit is all assembled, but I think I do need to adjust it a little bit. It's mostly an issue when I'm like sitting and stuff, and I want this to be really nice and comfy, so I want it to be easy to lay around and sit around in. Otherwise it's not going to be comfy. So I'm going to adjust that, and then I just need to make the collar and the little pom-poms, and then everything will be done.
So I adjusted the seam again, but it didn't really fix the problem. The problem is that when I sit down, the suit like chokes me in the front, so I think I needed some more length at the back neckline. Maybe I'll add another panel or something later. Anyway, so it's time to start on the detachable collar, so I just did a basic double rolled hem at the top.
Okay, so I sewed the hem onto one side of the collar, but for the other side, I think I need to go get some fishing line so that I can make like a more wavy hem so it'll stand up more, because otherwise if I just use it like this, it's going to be laying really flat. But I gotta go get the fishing line, which I don't want to do because it's cold, and I don't want to go outside when it's cold, but I need the fishing line, so I gotta do it.
Just kidding, I procrastinated by making the pom-poms instead. The tutorial for how I make these is going to be up on my Patreon, so if you're interested, the link is in my video description. Your support on there helps me make more videos and projects like this one. I forgot about adding the heart appliques, so I'm going to do that now.
Just kidding, we're actually going to go get the fishing line today. It's the next day. I'm gonna get the fishing line, I'm gonna finish up the collar, I'm gonna add the heart appliques, and then I gotta put my hair in curlers because I want it to be curly when I go take pictures tomorrow.
So I got dressed and went to the hardware store, and I found some fishing line, and it might be a bit too thick, but the other choices were too thin, so I had no good choice and I just had to get what they had. So I grabbed it, and of course it rained on me on the way back, typical Amsterdam weather. Okay, now I'm going to make my hair gel for curling my hair. I used a tablespoon of flax seeds and about a cup of water and simmer it together for a few minutes. While it was simmering, I wrapped the fishing line around the bottle I'm going to use for hair gel. I saw a tutorial for fishing line hems that said if you wrap it around something, it'll hold the shape. But you'll see what happens. Anyway, once the flax seeds have simmered, the water looks a little slimy and gel-like, so then it's done. I strain it and let it cool down, then I squeeze out the seeds. I added a few drops of essential oil to the spray bottle I'm using, and then poured the gel into the bottle to cool down. While it was cooling down, I worked on adding the heart appliques to the outfit because I forgot I needed to do that still. To make the heart appliques, I cut out some hearts from interfacing and ironed them to the red fabric and cut them out. Then I pinned them onto the outfit to figure out the best placement. I put the outfit on so I could see how they would look. I prefer to do details like this when the outfit is mostly done, so I can make sure they're in a spot that looks good. If I try to add some details like this before it's assembled, it'll end up being in the wrong spot and looking weird, even though it would be easier to put on before the garment is assembled. So yeah, I just like doing it this way. To put the appliques on, I just use a small zigzag stitch around the edge. The hearts are a little wobbly and uneven afterwards, so I iron them to make them smooth again. I also washed off the markings from the buttonholes. Now the outfit is actually done this time. Okay, back to the detachable collar. I unraveled the fishing line and I attempted to sew it onto the fabric, but it wasn't really looking how I thought it would. So I decided to take apart what I did and rewrap the fishing line and then iron it, but ironing did nothing either.
So since the fishing line thing isn't really working out right now, I guess I'm just gonna leave this here for now and like leave it overnight and then try doing the collar tomorrow, and hopefully the fishing line will have taken the shape, and if not, then I guess I'm just gonna have to go with whatever it gives me, I guess. So I'm gonna do my hair instead now.
So to curl my hair, I'm doing rag curls, so I'm using some strips of fabric I've cut out and used before. I did this method more when my hair was dyed black and it was a lot longer. It works really well on long hair, but I wanted to try it anyway. I spray a little bit of gel on my hair and then wrap it up with the fabric. This flaxseed gel is the best thing I found for holding curls in my hair. I use a little gel so my hair's damp but not wet. I also do this on clean, dry hair. If your hair's wet with water, the curls will never dry.
My hair is all in curlers. I don't know if this is gonna work or if it's gonna be too curly, but I'll probably be able to figure out something else. Too curly, I'll just like brush it. I'll figure something out. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up in like a scarf just to keep it all together. I will be back tomorrow to hopefully finish up the collar with the fishing lines. And then I'm also getting dressed up and going to take pictures. Yay, finally! It's time to try and finish up this collar.
So I made a mesh tulle layer for the collar too, with a ruffle at the end. So I sewed the fishing line to that layer first. I just used a zigzag stitch over the fishing line so it gets sewn into the middle. I kept the fishing line on the bottle to try and keep the shape, but it didn't really help. You'll see later. After I did the tulle layer, I did the satin layer. I just folded the edge with the fishing line inside the edge and zigzagged over it. Afterwards, I trimmed the excess seam on the satin layer. Then I sewed a gathering stitch onto the collar, making sure to sew over both layers. Then I needed a neck piece to sew the ruffly part onto, which I accidentally melted with the iron the first time I tried to iron it. So I cut out a new piece and did it again. Then I pinned the neck piece onto the ruffle so I could see how it was looking. Well, this isn't exactly what I was wanting, and the fishing line doesn't have the curvy look I was hoping for, but it's not too bad, and I really don't have the time or motivation to try anything else. So I just sewed the ruffle on and added ribbon at the back to tie it closed. I also added a snap at the bottom to hold it together. And with that, I was finally done with the collar. The last thing I needed to make is some little red hair bows. I cut 2 strips of the red fabric and folded them over and sewed down the edge. Then I turned them inside out and ironed them flat. I also turned in the ends and hand sewed them closed. Then I just tied the ribbons I made into bows on a little alligator hair clip. And with the hair bows made, everything was finally done.
Okay, so it's Friday, and I said I was going to take pictures today, but I want to get dressed up tomorrow, Saturday, anyway, so I'm like, there's no reason to get dressed up 2 days in a row. I'll just work on editing today, and I will get dressed up and take pictures tomorrow. I'm also going to go see the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, which I'm really excited about. I'm also really excited to get dressed up, but we're going to do it tomorrow. But today, I do want to like take out my hair and see how it looks, so yeah, I wanted to show you guys too. Okay, so here's how it's looking. It came out super curly. I was kind of expecting this to happen, but it's not exactly what I want. I want it to be a little bit less curly than this. So I'm probably not going to put the curlers back in and then just sleep on my hair like this. And that should make it a little bit less curly for tomorrow. And I can just smooth out the curls. So yeah, I'll be back again tomorrow to get dressed up and everything. Alright, I'm back, and it's finally time to get dressed up and go take pictures and everything. So I'm starting with my makeup, and the first thing that I need to do is shave off my eyebrows, because for this look I'm going to be painting on some new eyebrows, and I can't really block my eyebrows because in the Netherlands they don't sell the glue that you need for doing your eyebrows. Plus I don't really like how it looks, so I'm just going to go ahead and shave them off real quick, and I'll be right back. Alright, my eyebrows are shaved and it's time to do the makeup. I'm a little nervous, but I think I know what I want to do, and hopefully it works out the way that I want it to. the makeup's done and I'm feeling so cute. And I'm going to do my hair next and then get dressed.
Looking at the footage now, I kind of think my hair was cuter yesterday when it was super curly, but oh well. Anyway, I curled my bangs with my curling iron, and then I used my vintage boar bristle hairbrush to brush each curl individually. Then I separate each curl into a few smaller curls, which I curl around my finger to make sure they're going the right way. After fixing the curls, I'm doing the little heart ponytails. I take some small sections at the top of my head and put them into ponytails. Then I put another hairband about an inch above the first one. Separate this ponytail into 2 sections. I use a little hair mousse or gel to smooth the hair. Then I pull down each section of the hair away from the middle and use a clip to hold it in place. Then I take another hairband and put it around the little bits of hair and wrap it around the base, where I put the first band.
Alright, now my makeup and hair is finally done. I think this took me like 2 hours. Oh my gosh. It's time to get dressed, so yes, let's do that. Alright, I'm all dressed and I have everything on and I feel a little silly but also very cute. So I'm gonna go take some pictures and some videos next. Yes. It's very rainy, so that's very sad, but I think it'll be okay. I'll be able to take some pictures. So yeah, let's go do that. I'm bringing my shoes with me and I'll change into them when I go to take pictures.
We also went to the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, and it was pretty good. I had a fun time.
Alright, and that was it. Thank you so much for joining me. I think this outfit came out pretty cute, but I actually like my makeup and hair more than I like the outfit. I feel a little silly in the outfit, but I do think it came out pretty cute. Being a cute little Lovecore Clown is pretty fun. And up on my Patreon is going to be my little pom-pom tutorial. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out. The link is in my description. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!